Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Thanks a bunch for click this video. I'm Fatma Yurika and I'm from English Education Class B, State University of Makassar. In this video, I'd like to explain or resume about a methodical history of language teaching from book that I've read, which is Teaching by Principles and Interactive Approach to Language Pedagogy by H. Douglas Brown. So in this video, we are gonna talking about 7 methods, which is the first one, there is the grammar translation method, the second one, goal-in and the series method, the third one, the direct method, the fourth one, the audiolingual method, the fifth one, cognitive code learning, the sixth one, designer method of the Spirit 2017, and the last one, there is a beyond method. Before we go further, we need to know some definition of the approach, method, and technique from Edward Anthony, 1963. So, approach is a set of assumptions dealing with the nature of language, learning, and teaching. A method is overall plan for systematic presentation of language based upon a selected approach. And the technique is the specific activities which manifested in the classroom that were consistent with a method, and it's such any of wide variety of exercise activities or tasks used in language classroom for realizing lesson objectives. The next is about changing winds and shifting sands. Based on Albert Marquardt, he is defines that changing winds and shifting sands as a cyclical pattern in which a new method emerged about every quarter of century. Each new method broke from the old, but it took some of the positive aspects. The first method we're gonna talking about is the grammar translation method. In the Western world back in the 17th, 19th centuries, foreign language learning was associated with the learning of Latin and Greek, both supposed to promote their speakers' intellectuality. So at the time, it was of vital importance to focus on grammatical rules like syntactic structure. It is along with rote memorization of vocabulary and translation of literary text. In the 19th century, the classical method came to be known as the grammar translation method, which offered very little beyond an insight into the grammatical rules, which is attending the process of translating from the second to the native language. There are some major characteristics of grammar translation. The first one, classes are taught in the mother tongue. The second one, much vocabulary is taught in the form of lists of isolated words. The third one, long elaborate explanation of the intricacies of grammar are given. The fourth one, grammar provides the rules for putting words together. The fifth one, reading of difficult classical text is begun early. The next, little attention is paid to the content of the text. The seventh, often the only drills are exercises and translation disconnected sentences from the target language into the mother tongue. And the last one, little or no attention is given to pronunciation. Next, we're gonna talking about going and the series method. So, the series method is a method that taught learners directly without translation and conceptually without grammar rules. So, based on his book, Francois Goyin described his harrowing experiences of learning German, which helped him gain insights into the intricacies of language teaching and learning. After his failure in learning German, he finally found out the new idea after observing his nephew and came to the conclusion that language learning is a matter of transforming perceptions into conceptions and then using language to represent these conceptions. The next method is about the direct method. So the definition. The direct method is a teaching method that seeks to dispense with theoretical discussion and historical consideration in favor of concrete observation and practical experience. There are also some principles of this method. The first one, classroom instruction was conducted exclusively in the target language. The second one, only everyday vocabulary and sentences were taught. The third one, oral communication skills were built up in a carefully treated progression organized. The fourth one, grammar was taught inductively. The fifth one, new teaching points were taught through modeling and practice. The sixth one, concrete vocabulary was taught through demonstration, object and pictures. The seventh one, both speech and listening comprehension were taught. And the last one, correct pronunciation and grammar were emphasized. The next method is about the audiolingual method. The outbreak of World War II heightened the need for Americans to become orally proficient in the languages of their allies and enemies alike. And to the end, beats and pitches of the direct method were appropriate in order to form and support this new method. The Army method, which came to be known in the 1915 as the audiolingual method, is a method for foreign language teaching, which emphasizes the teaching of listening and speaking before reading and writing. Here there are some characteristics of the ALM adapt, which is adapted from Prater and Salsa Murcia in 1979. The first one, that new material is present in dialogue form. The second one, there is dependence on mimicry, memorization of set phrase, and overlearning. The third one, structures are sequenced by means of constructive analysis and taught in one time. The next is structural patterns are taught using repetitive drills. There is little or no grammatical explanation, and then vocabulary is strictly limited and learned in context. And then there is much use tapes, language labs, and visual aids. Great importance is attached to pronunciation. Very little use of the mother tongue. Successful responses are immediately reinforced. There is a great effort to get students to produce error-free utterances, and there is a tendency to manipulate language and disregard content. The next method is cognitive code learning. So cognitive code learning refers to a theory of a second language teaching and learning route in cognitive psychology and structural applied linguistics developed in the 1960s. The next material or the next method is designer method of the spirit 1970s. The Chomsky revolution in linguistics drew the attention of linguistics and language teachers to the deep structure of language. So in this method, there are 5 kinds of important things we need to know. The first one, there is community language learning. It is a kind of classic affectively based method. This teaching method involves psychological aspect and students work together to develop what skill of a language they will to learn. And then is the Suggestopedia. So this Suggestopedia promise great results if we use our brain power and inner capacities. Lozanov in 1979, he believed that we are capable of learning much more than we think. It stands to reason that music played an important role in this method, because if the students feel relaxed, he believed that they could think much more better to get the material. And the next is the silent way. So the silent way is a method of language that based on the premise that the teacher should be silent as much as possible in the classroom and let the learners to produce as much language as possible. The next is the total physical response. In this method of teaching language, we're using physical movement to react to verbal input. And the last one is the natural approaches, which is a method of language teaching that aims to foster naturalistic language acquisition in a classroom setting. It emphasizes communication and places discreet importance on conscious grammar study and explicit to correction of student errors. And then the last method is beyond method, notional functional syllabuses. A notional functional syllabus is an approach where the organization of the material is determined with notions or ideas that the learners expect to be able to express through the target language and functions each learners expect to be able to accomplish. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.